The nice thing about this build is it's very powerful early game, so you should be winning almost all of your fights early game. If you do it correctly, it can even carry in the late game as well. It also doesn't take up that many board slots to do this build if you do it properly. You can spend lots of money rolling for more automatons, rolling for the death rattle minions that we'll eventually need. Talk about that in a second. And also you can help your teammate. So step one, you want to pick up this trinket. Without this trinket, the build will not really work that well. You could probably still get an automaton build going without this trinket, but I don't recommend it. I think it's not as good without it, and it's probably the key feature of the build. I'd also recommend having 1 or 2 automatons before turn 6, because if you can't get a golden automaton by turn 9, this build will probably not scale enough to be able to go with it into the end game, and instead you might have to transition into another mech build or a different build like we'll talk about later in the video. Step number 2, pick up the trinket called Boom Controller. When you have space, summon an exact copy of the first mech that died each combat. This isn't a required trinket for the build to be good, but it's probably the best version of the build that there is. Number 3, make sure that your teammate is aware of what you're doing and that they're passing you key minions. This includes Kangor's Apprentice and more automatons. If your teammate doesn't help you find the pieces to this build, it'll be slightly less likely to find it, but it's still doable on your own if you do the build correctly. The good thing about this build is if you fail any of the 3 previous steps, it's still possible to win the game, or at least come in second place. You can transition to the mech build that scales off of how many magnetics a minion has, or if it's early enough, you can transition to any build and just have a couple automatons in play until they no longer are viable. If you found this video useful, consider subscribing. If you want to see the game that features this build, click on the video on the screen now.